This presentation is being recorded, and we will be posting it on our website for those, if you have coworkers that weren't able to join us or want to help kind of spread the word, we'll be able to make that available as well. You are, if you hadn't noticed, automatically muted when you come into the room. You do have the option of unmuting yourselves, but I would ask that for the time being, if you could place your questions in the, oops, wrong button, place your questions in the chat box. That I will be monitoring that to the best of my ability, and we will try and help keep the, I'm hitting the wrong buttons all over the place here. There we are. And we'll kind of address it that way and then leave it available for more open discussion towards the end. If you're having connectivity issues, we've found that turning off your video may help with that. It will help kind of free up your bandwidth for that. Likewise, if you're having sound issues, the phone number and meeting number are there. You should have also received that in your confirmation email. So, as I said, there are links to the report itself. You're more than welcome to follow along as we go through this. And like I say, feel free to throw out any questions as we go. So, want to take you first, before we get into some of the findings, on some of the background of this project so that we all kind of have the same perspective on the things we're talking about here. To give you an overall view, this project started as a collaboration between the Helen Bader Institute for Nonprofit Management at UWM and the newly formed Institute for Nonprofit Management Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Their director, Carol Brunt, is with us here today, and she'll be chiming in later, I'm sure. So we then decided we were at a point of wanting to do a statewide needs assessment, similar to what we did here in Milwaukee this last fall. The goal was to do a similar project all over the state. We quickly realized that with the advent of the pandemic and the shelter-in-place orders that were going on around the country, that wasn't going to be business as usual, and that we needed to shift gears right away. We reached out to our faculty affiliates, that is faculty at other campuses that have an interest in the kind of work HBI does or in the nonprofit sector, and pulled together a team of about 12 people representing 6 different campuses, including Oshkosh, Green Bay, Parkside, and UW-Madison and the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies. At the same time we were having these conversations, the University of San Diego released a survey to all nonprofits in San Diego County, looking at some of these same issues. They were gracious enough to make that available to us. We took their survey, made some quick edits to focus it more on our communities here in Wisconsin. For instance, at the time of the San Diego survey, the CARES Act was not a thing. So we quickly added some information about some of the stimulus funding that was available so that we could not only see what was happening there, but in the future track any efficiency or effectiveness of that funding as well. The goal of this is not just to sort of measure and assess the impact of nonprofits, but then take this information to legislators, to funders, and other organizations that provide resources to the nonprofit sector of Wisconsin, and work together in order to kind of figure out next steps in a way to support organizations through some of these challenges, as well as beyond, once we get to a point of recovery. So just to let you know, this is the basic timeline for the project. The report we're talking about today is phase 1. In order to pull a basic snapshot of what's going on out there, the main report has been released. You have that in your chat feature. There are sub-reports that are coming out, looking more specifically and more in depth at a couple of things. We'll talk further later on about some specific community issues that we've discovered. I know the sub-report on the northeastern Wisconsin area is coming out probably Monday, as well as a couple other communities in the next couple of weeks, and looking at particular subsectors as well. And then once we kind of get caught up with all of that, we turn around and we'll do it all again in July, um, looking at some of the same issues, but also a little deeper dive into some of the things we've learned. And we will just basically continue this until it's deemed no longer necessary. We are prepared to go well into 2021. I think most people that are paying attention to this realize that we're not really going to be totally out of the woods here for probably at least mid 21. And so we will just kind of keep doing what we can with this project until we don't need to anymore. Just to give you a basic idea of what we're going to be talking about, the report basically, and the survey and the whole project, look at three different areas. Primarily human resources, to include overall staffing issues, and that includes volunteer and paid staff, as well as payroll concerns, tying into finance and fundraising concerns, and how all of that plays into program delivery and service delivery. This initial survey was put out to the community in the last 2 weeks of April. So the information we're talking about is about a month old, and that'll come into play as we talk through this. We had over 600 respondents representing 54 of the 72 counties. You might think in a state where we have tens of thousands of nonprofits, that's a very small number. However, in this kind of work, we're actually really happy with that response rate. In talking to some colleagues in other states, they're actually a little jealous of our turnout. So kudos to the various communication networks that we utilized in order to get the word out. They certainly did their job. Of those 600 respondents, 85% of them expressed a strong interest in taking part in future surveys. So we're not just going to be taking snapshots, but we have identified a significant number of nonprofits that we can actually track progress from as well, and kind of see how they are managing through this whole issue. Majority of the number of responses we got came from the human services and arts community. So we don't tend to see a lot of action from the arts community at HBI. So kudos to Arts Wisconsin for a lot of the advocacy work they did on part of this project. The majority of the organizations we heard from are under a $500,000 budget, or yeah, $500,000, which tends to be fairly representative of the state sector. So we were kind of happy to see that as well. So let's get to hear why you're all here. Let's talk about what we found. As you're probably well aware, a number of organizations have already made significant reductions in their staff. Almost half made staff reductions right out of the gate as we went into work from home and shelter in place mode. 80% of their volunteer workforce was told to stay home. That significantly affects a lot of smaller organizations that are more volunteer driven and supported. And as you see, there's a significant concern about having to lay off or furlough employees down the line. In a lot of the open-ended questions, we didn't just collect numbered data. We actually gave them a chance to talk to us and tell us what they were thinking. And a lot of those open-ended responses were very, very concerned about morale and mental health of their staff. They were seeing an increased demand and not necessarily able to hire the additional staff to meet those new needs, and are very concerned about how their staff is holding up in light of it all. A lot of organizations are 20% are concerned about not being able to make payroll in the next, well, at the time, 8 weeks. We're talking about a month away now, where organizations are not necessarily going to be are going to be in a more of a position of challenge to pay their staff. A lot of them are concerned about basic operations functionality and paying rent. And as you can see, almost everybody is concerned about a decline in donations. We do want to follow up and find out if that holds true. We're also anecdotally hearing from organizations that have seen an actual uptick in their donations, individual donations, but we'll be very curious to see if that trend holds statewide in the next go around with the survey. Um, Organizations are already, however, to try and alleviate that, talking about alternative sort of crisis budgeting and reaching out to their major donors to see about sort of making up those differences. And as you can see, over half of them applied for the Paycheck Protection funding available from the state. We did find that a lot of organizations did not make use of some of the other funding, primarily because it wasn't specifically directed at nonprofits, and a lot of them were not as eligible as they perhaps could be the next go around. So all of this filters down to how the programs are actually being offered around the state. As you can see right out of the gate, almost 40% stopped or started or were moved to providing services in a reduced capacity. Arts organization, education organizations understandably meet in large groups typically, and so they knew with the shelter in place order that that was no longer going to be possible. Um, What's a little disturbing is to see that, again, right out of the gate, 12% just stopped providing services altogether. That's not to say they stopped functioning or closed their doors permanently, but they were not in a situation based on their programming able to continue that any further. As I mentioned before, has been this increased demand for services, but as we all understand, some of the mental health challenges, in addition to the financial challenges we've already talked about, it has created an even greater burden on these organizations and increased a lot of concern on how they are connecting to their marginalized clients, their more vulnerable communities, hard to reach clients who may, considering the elderly or communities who don't necessarily have easy access to technology, whether it be in the urban or rural areas. Internet service is not always available everywhere in the state, and so that's a significant concern when you're trying to offer services virtually. Um, but in spite of all of that, as you can see here, almost 50% are providing less services to these more vulnerable communities. As we move into the next phase, into the next month at the end of this 8-week survey period, again, same communities that stopped or broke down their capacities and services at the beginning are probably not going to be likely to offer much of anything, arts, environment, and education, after June in the current state. However, they are taking, organizations overall, taking a lot of steps towards improving the situation. We already talked about the volunteer reduction. There's been a cancellation of fundraising events, obviously. It is interesting to see what's going on in the community in terms of virtual fundraising and sort of the ingenuity and creativity that some of the nonprofits are showing in terms of moving their fundraising communities who are traditionally, let's say, perhaps more technically challenged into an online format and getting them accustomed to that. We're going forward here. We noticed in the survey responses that we had 6 primary community clusters of the responses. Some of these will probably make a lot of sense: Milwaukee, Madison, Kenosha, Racine, Northeastern Wisconsin. It's where we had the largest groupings of responses. So in this initial study, we did take a little deeper dive to see if there were any irregularities in any of these communities, things that weren't necessarily happening or happening differently than they were in the rest of the state. Right out of the gate, we noticed that Madison, Milwaukee, and Northeastern Wisconsin all showed very significant rates of collaboration with other nonprofits. Madison being number 1, Milwaukee right behind it, and Northeastern Wisconsin putting in a really significant showing in that area. Madison and Milwaukee also showed very significant numbers of organizations collaborating with local government in ways that they felt might help alleviate some of the challenges. Lacrosse, it was a little concerning that about half of the organization feel that they are going to be they're probably going to be unlikely to offer any services whatsoever in about a month's time. So as we talk regionally, I am going to invite, there are a couple of, at least Carol, I'm looking here, some of our research partners that worked on this to talk about things they noticed in their own communities and some of the other areas here. You want to chime in, Carol?
Thanks, Bryce, for the introduction. And again, thanks to you for pulling together this presentation and for everybody that's participating today. I think it's a great overview of the report and provides us with a lot of detailed information. And it's very exciting to see that we have 85% of our respondents agreeing to continue the survey process with us and being able to track them. I wanted to highlight, because I'm at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and just wanted to highlight one of the things that we saw in our community. It was very striking, the number of nonprofits that actually closed their doors virtually immediately because of the lack of student volunteers and student interns and that were available. With the campus closing, there was almost an immediate impact. Well, there was an immediate impact on the nonprofits in the city, some of whom have still closed their doors. Others are managing to struggle along with different assignments, but it's been very, very interesting to see in the community. And a real shout out to your resource document that just went out this week, because we've been circulating that around a lot to our organizations. We've got a lot of smaller nonprofits that kind of information is very helpful to. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here and urge anybody to spread the word about the survey, the second survey that'll be coming out shortly.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I apologize for the screen popping back and forth. My mouse is being really touchy today. All right, so what do we learn out of all of this? We went and specifically asked nonprofit leaders in what ways academic and community community partners can assist them through some of these challenges. And you're looking at, I think, 4 of the 5. I think I missed technology. 4 of the 5 ways that they specifically identified for help. Number 1 is public education. Based on how the question was framed, this could be translated to advocacy, but not necessarily public policy work, more about community awareness of the challenges and needs of the sector, just helping get the word out, basically. Number 2 was fundraising reevaluation, understanding that they're facing some challenges that they're not used to. They're looking for help in reevaluating their overall strategies. Communications is arguably a little different than public education. We're talking more in sort of organizational messaging and reaching their constituents and their overall communities better and more effectively, rather than looking at sort of sector-wide support. They're looking more specifically at organizational communications. And also help with financial scenario planning. And the one that I wanted to include here that I need to put back in is technology. Understandably, not everybody has access, as I said before, to strong internet service, or let alone the virtual world that we're all connecting to right now. And so that technology has always been a big issue, particularly in the rural areas, but it's that much more accented right now. So what do we want to do with all of this? As I said, our goal was to try and find a way forward. All of the campuses that are involved in this project are having these conversations separately and together, looking at ways to network more strongly and kind of point all of the different resources that we have available in the UW system towards the nonprofit sector in a more effective way. I can say that on behalf of HBI, we are we have been struggling for several years on how to engage beyond Milwaukee. And this has opened up some opportunities for us in ways that we hadn't anticipated. And we are actively, in fact, over the course of the summer, we'll be opening an online training center, not graduate education or undergraduate education or even continuing education, but looking more at specific hard skill, technical skills training made available online, both with synchronous and asynchronous learning. In other words, working with an instructor or self-study as and making that available around the state. Um, as an example, we have in the next couple of weeks uh, uh, a series of courses on financial scenario planning, as well as sort of more crisis accounting issues. Um, and then we will also be looking at some communications related programming as well. Tied to all of this, we are actually very happy to announce that we have entered into a training membership with Candid. As many of you know, Candid is the home of GuideStar, the Foundation Center, Grant Source, and a number of different resources that are out there. Those of us in Milwaukee know that Marquette University is an access point for the Funders Information Network. UWM will also have that capability, but this membership takes us kind of another step beyond that and provides us access with not only all of their data, which is obviously for a research center very important and attractive, but also a lot of their existing training materials. They have a number of online courses already in existence, as well as a huge resource of training materials for us to build our own as well. So that's all part of this overall sort of moving forward plan that we're working on. I know that, as I say, other campuses are having similar conversations, and we are always open to conversations with community members on ways to build on that. So that's kind of the overview of all of this. I'd be more than happy to address any questions, or if we want to just, God forbid, unmute ourselves and have a conversation and hope it goes really well. With 40 people, we could try that, but at this point, that's basically all I've got. I'd be more than happy to hear your thoughts and suggestions moving forward. I will say one thing that I wanted to, I kind of forgot to mention, that in the next round of reporting, we will be, as I said, looking at both some of the issues here that we've already talked about so that we can measure progress, but looking at additional aspects. And one of the things that we've really pegged that we really want to focus on next time around are looking more specifically at the communities being served by these organizations and the effect that this has had on them all. We're talking not specifically of communities of color, communities with physical or intellectual challenges, all of those communities that these organizations that are struggling, and how they are being impacted by all of this. So that's something that we'll be diving deeper into over the summer. So any questions, comments, gossip, anything, I'm happy. All right. So with that, I mean, you are more than welcome at any point to contact me directly. Since we're all working from home, my phone number is probably not the best way. Email is best. So feel free to reach out with any questions. As I said, some of you that may have come in later, if you have access to the report and the research project site, as well as the moving forward re-engagement document there.
Hi, Bryce. I do have a question.
Sure.
My name is Carrie. I work in La Crosse,
Okay.
and I was wondering, do you have like the categorical breakdowns of these nonprofits in your collection of demographics. Did you do that?
Yes, yes. And specifically talking about La Crosse, as we look at some of these regional communities, we'll be providing that as well. The report does break down sort of where the responses came from in terms of sort of subsector, whether it be health or education or arts, as far as an overall percentage of responses. And in the local community reports, we'll be doing the same thing as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank
Great,
you.
great. Anything else? Mary Beth Collins, I see you just kind of logged in. Mary Beth is one of our colleagues from UW-Madison, the director of the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies. Did you want to, now that we're kind of wrapping up, you've been through this before, you know what we talked about.
Yeah.
Anything you want to throw in?
Oh, I'm so sorry for my late arrival. My last meeting ran dreadfully over, but I knew that this would be under control without me being here because of our past experiences with it and the other colleagues on the call. But no, just grateful to be here. Thanks to everybody that took a little time out of their Friday to hear about it. And then we are getting those community-based reports ready. So for the question that just came up, we should be able to provide some more granular information for La Crosse and other specific communities in Wisconsin where a little bit more breakout on various metrics will be possible. So thank you.
And you are specifically working on the La Crosse report,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we got a pretty good response from La Crosse, and there is a way of observing the data per the kind of sector that those organizations are each in. And I think one of the things that's come up is that in La Crosse and Dane and some of the other communities we looked at, I think we would be interested in a slightly larger sample size than what we even got in the first round. So although we are going to have the advantage of following up with the organizations that reported the first time, I think some of us at least would like to explore how to get more organizations to the table as well, which I think is possible, right, Bryce? With
Yes,
future
absolutely.
reporting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping that in the subsequent reports that, you know, I think one of the things that I've been reflecting on a lot is that even though we got such an impressive amount of turnout in this statewide first round of reporting, it is notable that that was during the most intense period of organizations trying to seek funding through PPP and emergency funds and meet new needs. And I think we may have a chance of even getting bigger sample sizes from those communities in these next waves as folks are settling into their new reality a little bit more too. So
yeah, definitely. I also noticed that Deborah Karp from UW Parkside is on the call too. She's not going to get out of this too easily. Deborah, do you have anything you want to throw out or add? Or are you going to be shy?
Oh, well, thanks. I wasn't expecting to say anything.
You don't have to.
No, well, I guess I kind of want to echo though what Mary Beth said. We had a reasonable turnout of responses from Racine and Kenosha, but I'm hoping to see more organizations participate in this next round. There were, I mean, clearly it was crazy time, and on top of that, both of our United Ways and our counties had recently issued surveys to the nonprofits. And so, you know, I think our community in general was experiencing survey fatigue with very little time to complete it. But I mean, and we do have some information, but you know, our motivation in getting involved at all in this is to figure out ways that we can better serve and work together and partner with the community to address the most pressing kinds of issues that are emerging at this time.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, thank you for that, because that does bring up a point that, you know, as both Deborah and Mary Beth mentioned, the survey initially went out right at the beginning when everybody was working from home and hadn't really settled in, and I think it was very present on everybody's mind how to manage this. I do have a concern personally about what our response rate might be as we move along and people have settled into this new normal. And we hope that everybody will continue to help kind of drive that participation. We certainly look forward to kind of doing what we can as we go through this progress together. There is a question about the financial scenario planning sessions. We do not have specific dates. I actually have a meeting with the instructors on Monday to hammer some of that out, but I would strongly suggest that follow our if you're not already, get on our email list, follow our social media. We will definitely be getting word out that way. And doing what we can to kind of help spread that word. Like I say, we don't have specific dates yet, but the goal is to get it out during the next several weeks, ideally before in the first half of June. So that's about as specific as I can be at this point. Anything else? I must be getting this down because this is the shortest one we've had. So I appreciate everybody taking part in this conversation. Like I say, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I'm more than happy to entertain conversations and discussion about this. As far as our, let's see, I would say somebody asked about how to get on our newsletter. I think the best option is to, let me see if I can, I'm gonna try something here. And the best option is to go to our website, and in a moment I'll show you exactly where. If you simply go to, this is the Helen Bader website, it is, I will plug, oops, I'm having issues here. And then if you simply go to the contact page, you can ask a question, whoops, and it be included. So that's probably the best, no, actually, no, stay connected. There you go. And you'll have an option of different areas that you're going to, because we have 5 different news lists that go out regarding, based on your interests, you can pick and choose. So that is probably the best way to get on our email list. Or like I say, you can just email me directly and say, send me your stuff and I'll make sure you get on the list. So with that, I'm gonna close it all up. And like I say, you can look for this presentation online next week sometime. So enjoy the weekend. I don't know where you are, but it's looking to be a nice weekend here for the most part. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.